Well, hello, Nativity Bible Heads. It is Dr. Wayne, and it is time for Bible Study Wednesday. We are, during December, looking at the ministry of Isaiah. Now, the thing that I am trying to concentrate on the most is that portion of his ministry that caused him to interact with King Ahaz in such a way that he would say words like, the woman is with child, and you will call, and she will bear a son, and you will call him Emmanuel. Yeah, right? That's a very big thing for us in Christianity. And what we're doing is looking at what was going on at the time of Isaiah that would have him say those words to any king, let alone Ahaz. So what we're going to do today is we got to go back to 2 Kings chapters 15 and 16 and get a bigger idea of what was happening. We want to firmly anchor ourselves in the historical situation so that we can understand why he would eventually even have to talk to the king about anything. So what we're getting at today is the historical context of Isaiah's ministry when he gave that prophecy about the woman with child, and you shall call him Emmanuel. Okay? There's a lot going on here. Okay, so we did cover 2 Kings chapter 15 a few months ago, but I got to point to a couple of things here, and then my goal today is to finish. I'm not going to do much with Isaiah because there's a whole lot of context here, and we got to get it from 2 Kings chapter 16, okay? So if we go back to 2 Kings chapter 15, which we already covered, remember there was this time in, it was like in the 8th century, okay, in the northern kingdom, that there was a lot of bloodshed, a lot of changing of the guards. If we look back, anytime we see the words King Azariah, we're talking about that king who was also named Uzziah, who was the king of Judah when Isaiah's ministry began, right? So if we look here in chapter 15, in the 39th year of King Azariah of Judah, that's King Uzziah, okay? And so if it's the 39th year, that means that it's toward the end of his ministry, or toward the end of his reign, but before Isaiah's ministry, okay? Menachem, son of Ghadai, began to reign over Israel. He reigned 10 years in Samaria. Anytime you're mentioning Samaria, you're talking about the city. That's the capital of the northern kingdom, Israel. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from the days of from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he caused Israel to sin. Remember, our narrator in 2 Kings, all he really cares about is, are you making any worship outside of Jerusalem? If you are, then you're wrong, okay? This seems to be his main key for judging good or bad. Verse 19. King Pul of Assyria came against the land. Now, many of us think that this is a nickname for Tiglath-Pileser III, who's going to be mentioned here shortly, but here is not mentioned with his full name. King Pul of Assyria came against the land. Menachem gave Paul 1,000 talents of silver so that he might help him confirm his hold on the royal power. So this is what you did to maintain power. You would pay a ransom. You would pay some sort of it's kind of like, what do they call that when you pay them off so that they don't beat you up? That kind of thing, okay? Menachem exacted the money from Israel, that is, from all the wealthy, 50 shekels of silver from each one, to give to the king of Assyria. Okay, here's what we need to keep in mind also. There's Assyria, which is farther to the northwest, and then there's Assyria, which was adjacent to Israel. And Assyria is starting to be on the rise, okay? And Syria is starting to be on the decline, all right? This is very important to remember. Spoiler alert, it will be Assyria who eventually takes over Israel, okay? It will be Assyria who does that in 722, okay? So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land. So this is just a way of reminding us that this isn't the time when they totally take it over, but they had dominance, and the king was paying them off to keep them from being attacked, okay? Now the rest of the deeds of Menachem, in 2 Kings 15:21. Now the rest of the deeds of Menachem and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Menachem slept with his ancestors, and his son Pika succeeded him. Okay, Pika, okay? Remember this guy. In the 15th year of King Azariah of Judah, okay? Again, that's the name of the king that when he died is Isaiah's ministry started in Judah, okay? In the 50th year of King Azariah of Judah, Pika, son of Menachem, began to reign over Israel in Samaria. He reigned 2 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of the Jeroboam son of Nebat, which he caused Israel to sin. Pika, son of Ramallah, his captain, I get this, conspired against him with 50 of the Gileadites and attacked him in Samaria in the citadel of the palace along with Argob and Ariah. He killed him and reigned in place of him. A coup, okay? So you've got, so remember, you got your southern kingdom of Judah, you got the northern kingdom of Israel, you've got the kingdom of Aram or Syria, and then there's the kingdom of Assyria, right? Well, what's happening here is there's a coup that is effected by the king of Syria to get this guy, Pika, in charge. So it's like regime change, you know, you go in and you change the king. So that's what Syria had done with Israel, okay? Now, the rest of the deeds of Pika and all that he did are written in the Kings. Verse 27. In the 52nd year of King Azariah of Judah, Pika, son of Ramallah, began to reign over Israel in Samaria. He reigned 20 years. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he caused Israel to sin. In the days of, verse 29, in the days of King Pika of Israel, remember, he was the one who was put in power by this foreign country. Okay. In the days of King Pika of Israel, King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria came and captured Ijon, Abel, Beth Maacah, Janoah, Kadesh, Hazor, Gilead, and Galilee, all the land of Naphtali, and he carried the people captive to Israel. So what that sentence just did is like a whole bunch of history whereby, okay, that kingdom of Aram or Syria that was just to the north of / east of the northern kingdom Israel, it gets overtaken. It is no more, okay? Tiglath-Pileser is overtaken Syria. Now, verse 30. Then Hoshea, son of Elah, made a conspiracy against Pika, son of Ramallah, attacked him and killed him. He reigned in place of him in the 20th year of Jotham, son of Uzziah. Now, the rest of the acts of Pika, blah, 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 blah. Okay, now, going to 2 Kings chapter 16 now, okay? In the 17th year of Pika, son of Ramallah, King Ahaz, son of Jotham of Judah, began to reign. All right, King Ahaz. Very important that we remember what's going on here. King Ahaz is the Davidic king in Judah. He is the person to whom Isaiah is speaking in his prophecies in Isaiah chapter 7 about a woman will bear a son and you will name him Emmanuel. Ahaz is the king who received this message, okay? I'm just keeping this, like, in case you're wondering, why do we care about King Ahaz? This is why. He was the king to whom Isaiah was prophesying when he said those words, okay? All right, but, okay, Ahaz was 20 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 16 years in Jerusalem. He did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord. So in the estimation of our narrator here, he was a bad king, right? He did not do what was right in the sight of the Lord, but he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. So he's basically getting written off as saying, he was just like those kings from the northern kingdom. He even made his son pass through fire. What, according to the abominable practices of the nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. He sacrificed and made offerings in the high places, on the hills, and under every green tree. So what Ahaz is getting dinged for here is syncretism of Canaanite worship, okay? Canaanite worship was ubiquitous when they took over the land. It did not get wiped out. It did not get discontinued. A lot of it just got folded in, okay? This is what our narrator isn't very happy about by describing Ahaz as bad, okay? Verse 5, then King Rezin of Aram and King Pika of Ramallah of Israel came up to wage war on Jerusalem. Okay. Remember this kingdom to the north that's being taken over by that kingdom of Assyria? Well, they join forces. The king of Aram, or Syria, joins forces with the king of the northern kingdom, Israel. They form an alliance. We call it historically the Syro, S-Y-R-O, Ephraimite alliance. And the Syro-Ephraimite War is what ensued. They were in cahoots. So remember how in the United States here we have a thing called the French and Indian War? Well, why do we call it the French and Indian War? It's not because the French and the Indians were fighting against each other. It means the French and the Indians were fighting together, okay? The Syro-Ephraimite War is that same kind of thing. The Syrians, Arameans, and the northern kingdom. Remember, Ephraim was a nickname for the northern kingdom, okay? Why was Ephraim a nickname for the northern kingdom? Ephraim was a nickname for the northern kingdom because that was the land allotment that was the largest, okay? Remember, Jacob had 12 sons, and Joseph was one of his sons. Joseph didn't get any land. Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And they kind of get counted in as the 12 because the Levites, remember, the son Levi, they were the priests. They didn't get any land. So Joseph divides into two to make that out to 12, okay, 12 allotments of land, okay. That's why it's called Ephraim. So the Syro-Ephraimite alliance is in play here. Our narrator doesn't call it that, but he knows about it because he's describing what they did while they were in cahoots, okay? All right, so King Rezin of Aram, verse 5, and King Pika, son of Ramallah of Israel, that's the northern kingdom, came up to wage war on Jerusalem. What were they doing waging war on Jerusalem? What they were doing was trying to get Judah to join them in being a stronger force against Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria, who would eventually overtake the northern kingdom. Now, Ahaz is being pressured by that alliance of the northern kingdom Israel and Aram or Syria. They were trying, it's like, if you think of it as like, of the Syro-Ephraimite alliance, they were trying to pressure Judah to join them in a way of withstanding this power from farther west that this new one, from Tiglath-Pileser III from Assyria. Okay, they waged war on Jerusalem, verse 5. They besieged Ahaz, but could not conquer him. This is all context for Isaiah's ministry to Ahaz, because Ahaz is the one who is that Isaiah is talking to when he says what he says in Isaiah chapter 7, which we're not going to get to this week because there's a lot we got to unpack here. Verse 6, at that time the king of Edom recovered Elath for Edom and drove the Judeans from Elath, and the Edomites came to Elath, where they live to this day. Okay, so basically what this is saying is that there is some a movement in that realm of Edom. Edom is that country on the east side of the Jordan, south, south, like by the Dead Sea. They continued to be a problem for the Israelites, for the Judeans. And they never failed to always have some sort of, they were like a burr in the side of Israel. There's even one of the minor prophets who does nothing but rail against Edom, okay? We're not going to get to that today, but this is important that we know so that when we see that book, I think it's either Nahum or Obadiah, I can't remember which one specifically, but we'll get to it eventually, where all they do is just badmouth Edom. Okay, verse 7 of 2 Kings chapter 16. Ahaz sent messengers to King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, saying, okay, I am your servant and your son. Come up and rescue me from the hand of the king of Aram and from the hand of the king of Israel who are attacking me. Okay, get the picture. Judean king being pressured to join the Syro-Ephraimite alliance, which was those two kings of Israel and Aram, Rezin and Pika. Pika was the Israelite. Rezin was the Syrian or Aramean. And what Ahaz is doing is seeking help from that thing that the northern kingdom and Syria had allied to go against. So he's trying to fight for his independence. Our narrator in 2 Kings does not have a lot of bad to say about this choice. In the big picture, yes, he thought Ahaz was a bad king, but we're not necessarily seeing that this is presented in a bad light. Listen up as we continue. So his goal, Ahaz's goal, is to ally himself with a power that will keep him independent so that he can still have his throne. Remember, he is the Davidic heir, and he doesn't think that it would be prudent to join Rezin and Pika against Tiglath-Pileser. He thought it would be better to just join up with King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, okay? Which is interesting because that's the situation in Isaiah chapter 7, which we will get to next week, about asking for a sign, and the sign itself was, the young woman shall bear a child, and you should call him Emmanuel. Okay, this is the king that's getting that advice, and he is reaching out to Assyria. Assyria, remember, is the kingdom that will eventually overtake the northern kingdom of Israel in 722. Okay. Verse 9. The king of Assyria listened to him. Oh, no. Let's go back up. Verse 8. Ahaz also took the silver and gold. Look at this. Ahaz also took the silver and gold found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the king's house and sent a present to the king of Assyria. This is called paying tribute. This is like paying somebody off so they don't beat you up. Yes, that's what's going on. That's an action that Ahaz is taking. The king of Assyria listened to him. Oh, that's interesting. In the eyes of our narrator, Ahaz is actually making good choices, okay? He's not dinging him for reaching out to Tiglath-Pileser III of Assyria. And it's reflected by saying, the king of Assyria listened to him. The king of Assyria marched up against Damascus and took it, carrying its people captive to Kir. Then he killed Rezin. In a big swoop there, that is the overtaking of Assyria has taken over Syria. Whenever we're seeing the name of the city Damascus, that is the capital of Syria, okay? And to say that the king of Assyria marched against Damascus and took it, that means that the Syro-Ephraimite alliance is done. It didn't work. It was not something that in the end kept the Assyrians at bay. And then notice it says that he killed Rezin. Rezin was the king of Aram. So now Syria has officially fallen. And that partnership that the northern kingdom had with Syria has put them in danger of being overtaken. Verse 10 of 2 Kings 16. When King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, remember, Damascus had been the kingdom of Syria. It was now Assyrian because of this takeover. Ahaz is now doing some political, what do you call that, when you're talking and not fighting? The word is escaping me. But yeah, this is him saying like, okay, well, you know, we can work this out so that everybody gets what they want. That's kind of what he's trying to do. When King Ahaz went to Damascus to meet King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria, he saw the altar that was at Damascus. What kind of an altar would that be? Well, it would probably be a Syrian one or Aramean one. King Ahaz sent to the priest Uriah. By the way, Uriah is a priest that we see mentioned in the book of Isaiah. So this is giving us some context of who he is. A model of the altar and its pattern exact in all its details. The priest Uriah built the altar in accordance with all that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus. Just so did the priest Uriah build it before King Ahaz arrived from Damascus. So you just get the picture here. He liked something so much like, oh, I want to duplicate that in Judah, okay? Remember, this is the king to whom Isaiah said, the woman is with child, and she will bear a son, and you will name him Emmanuel. That's who Ahaz is. When the king came from Damascus, the king viewed the altar. Then the king drew near to the altar, went up on it, and offered his burnt offering and his grain offering, poured out his drink offering, and dashed the blood of the offerings of well-being against the altar. So he basically used it like a regular worship altar. We don't see a whole lot of judgment about this. In the eyes of the narrator, this seems to be okay. The bronze altar that was before the Lord, he removed from the front of the house, from the place between his altar and the house of the Lord, and put it on the north side of his altar. I don't want to get into the details of all that, not really all that important, but just to know that there's more adjusting the temple in Jerusalem based on this new altar that he's building. Verse 15, King Ahaz commanded the priest Uriah, saying, upon the great altar offer the morning burnt offering and the evening grain offering and the king's burnt offering and his grain offering with the burnt offering of all the people of the land, their grain offering and their drink offering. Then dash against it all the blood of the burnt offering and all the blood of the sacrifice. Put the bronze altar, but the bronze altar shall be for me to inquire by. So he's like, create a new thing. The priest Uriah did everything that King Ahaz commanded. We're not seeing a whole lot of judgment about this. So it's like, if you're wondering, like, well, what is going on here? It appears that in the eyes of our narrator, Ahaz is doing what is prudent. He's not. A lot of times we see the narrator of our biblical story ding the kings for not trusting in the Lord and trusting in foreign alliances. And this one, we're not really seeing that, okay? Verse 17. Then King Ahaz cut off the frames of the stands and removed the laver from them. Okay, the frames of the stands, okay. So they had these pedestals that they had certain effects on in the temple. And apparently they're precious metals or something. But notice this thing about the laver, from the laver. That's these the little bowls. And a lavabo bowl is something you wash yourself in, so there's little bowls. And not just those bowls, but look, he removed the sea from the bronze oxen that were under it and put it on a pediment of stone. In the temple, there was this thing, this big baptismal font. It's called the sea, S-E-A, and there's 12 oxen that it's sitting on. I believe this is something that's been imitated by the LDS temples in the United States and around the world. But you see, get the picture here? He's removed that bowl. He removed it, and he put it on a pediment of stone. So it's like, does that mean that the oxen were like used for their precious metals? I don't know. The covered portal, verse 18, the covered portal for use on the Sabbath that had been built inside the palace and the outer entrance for the king, he removed from the house of the Lord. He did this because of the king of Assyria. Notice still, we're not seeing a lot of judgment about it. So it seems that in the eyes of the narrator, Ahaz is being prudent. Verse 19, now the rest of the acts of Ahaz that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Ahaz slept with his ancestors and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David, and his son Hezekiah succeeded him. Okay, that's all the farther we're going in 2 Kings right now. I had to go back to 2 Kings chapter 16 because when we continue next week in Isaiah chapter 8, we're going to need to be aware of the fact that Ahaz appears as one of these kings of like, he's already been judged bad, but yet these things that he does with worship are not judged harshly. How does Isaiah deal with this? How does Isaiah interact? What's his take on all of this? This is the background for Isaiah chapter 7 that we're going to get into next week. So that is all we're going to do this week. This is a study, quite frankly, that I've been wanting to do for quite a while because of the emphasis that we have on Isaiah 7 as Christian prophecy. And it's very important that we get the circumstances in which this prophecy was spoken so we can understand how could it be that we see it also in the same light as like, oh, this is a word of hope. This is even a prophecy of the Christ child, okay? That is what we are looking at. I am done for this week. Until next time, shalom.